Welcome back to our podcast, A Day in the Life with Gena Ayana. Today we have a very special guest for you guys. Her name is Gena. She works in the EOP office, and why don't you explain the rest to us? Tell us something about yourself.
So first, thank you for inviting me to your podcast. I'm kind of excited to talk with you both today. So I'm Gena Willis. I am a senior counselor for EOP here at Brockport. I've been here in this position probably about 6 months now or so. But I've been at the college for almost 8 years. I was previously working in the School of Business as a career advisement coordinator. So I've had a lot of opportunity to work with students in terms of figuring out what they want to do in their lives, where they want to go, how to get there, how to plan. And now I get to help students walk through their academic careers and their plans, and then still help them in terms of the career as well. So it's been a pretty cool, exciting kind of time here for me. I'm also an alum, so it's kind of like coming full circle for me, actually being a student, going through that, having people to help me, and now becoming a person that helps other people.
Nice. So it seems like you've really made your mark here at Brockport, and that's something that I hope to be able to do one day. So today we want to focus on a topic. This topic is something that I feel everyone does, but we're going to go about it a different way. We want to know, how did COVID affect you as a staff member here at Brockport, along with the students you had? So we have a couple questions for you today, and we're just going to go down the list and, take it how it comes.
Okay.
So first question would be, how difficult or easy is it to use the distance learning technology? For example, computers, tablets, video calls, and so on.
So for me personally, it's very easy because I'm somebody who's tech savvy. So I was already working with our tech systems personally on campus for work. I studied higher ed in graduate school, and one of the courses we had to take was technology in higher ed. So I was already up on the Zooms. I was up on what are the other stuff, the Teams and all that we use now. We had already been trained in that area. So for me, it was very a good or easy transition to jump from everything is face to face and through email to now let's go virtual. Let's do this. I can say that I've watched a lot of my colleagues struggle because they are not so much tech savvy. They're not into doing stuff on the computer. They very much rather have paper and pen. Some of them still use the chalk on the chalkboard instead of the whiteboard with the, right? So for those type of faculty, and we need both spectrums, right? We got to keep it across the board. Mm-hmm. But for those faculty, I watched them struggle in trying to keep up with the change that came about because of COVID. I know a lot of the conversations that I've heard that have been had around campuses and how they've functioned during COVID have been geared to the student experience, but there's the other side of how the faculty, their struggle. I think a lot of students don't understand that faculty were actually struggling and trying to figure it out the same way the students were.
Yeah, I definitely think that as a student myself, having to transition from everything in person and, like you said, written assignments, handwritten stuff, it was kind of frustrating to have to deal with certain professors. Even though we know that this was thrown at us all, it was just frustrating because it felt like we was like teaching ourselves, and it was just a lot of too many holes in it. It was very annoying.
For me, it was weird only because I don't want to say I'm tech savvy enough to work for Best Buy's Geek Squad, but I know surface level stuff. But I know the surface level stuff regular Microsoft Word and stuff basically what I would use on a regular, even while school was still in session.
Yeah.
But in terms of I didn't even know there was such thing as Brockport Teams until
girl.
Yeah.
I got a link and I'm I think this is a whole scam.
Every time I open my EOP laptop, it opened up the Teams. And I'm just
but I never used that before. I didn't know that.
And the crazy thing about it is the college didn't use Microsoft Teams at all prior to COVID. The college was barely using Zoom prior to COVID. So the introduction of these programs to you all was an introduction at the same time to faculty and staff. And for faculty, it was not only as an introduction, but you need to now use this tool to actually teach and do what you've been doing, and there's no time to figure it out. I think personally that was a time where the college should have taken an actual pause. Like, let's take some time. Let's take the 2 weeks that we think COVID is going to last and figure out how to actually work these programs to make them successful and beneficial to students. Instead, we were just like, no, we got to keep going because we're strong and we're a good institution. Let's just move forward. But in reality, the stronger thing to me to do would have been take an actual pause.
You see, that's what we assumed was going on. That's why I think we was getting frustrated too, because we just assumed that the school as a whole sent out some type of how-to and how to do this and how to do that. But it's clear that they didn't.
No, they did not. And in addition to not sending out a how-to, it was a very much last minute. This is Saturday, Sunday before classes are going to come back on Monday because kids are come back from spring break. And you need to figure it out over this weekend without any instruction. And so that left room for, I think, a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration, a lot of issues that could have probably been avoided.
So next question would be, how connected do you feel to your students right now? And what about other staff members?
So my students, I think I feel connected to them. I think prior to COVID, I had stronger connections because it was always in person. It was always face to face. And majority of the time, the students were coming to me in crisis. So they kind of got to learn, like, Gena's got their back. That's just who I am. Now it's more of we've pushed students to the virtual stuff so much that students have felt like they have to fight for themselves. They have to figure it out on their own. And so there's a mix of, okay, I think she's got me, but I just got to figure it out because I don't know, right? So there's that mix, there's that balance. I think the struggle is consistent across campus. I think there's a lot of staff and faculty who have no connection at all at this point because they weren't strong before. So it's real interesting to see that shift.
I think, like, for me, like, I don't really remember having the option to, like, be in person or virtual. Like, it was just in person or nothing before, like, before COVID. And now it's like, oh, you can either come in person or virtual. Like, for example, with with my counselor, I haven't seen her yet. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it's like virtual, yes, but not in person. So I technically still, like, I've seen you, and you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's crazy because I actually just this week told all my students, like, everybody is just in person unless you are physically not in this county, because I have 2 students I think that are still in New York City. So for those students, we're going to keep it virtual, but for everybody else, you're here, you're in class, nobody's wearing masks. Why not come in here? I want you to understand and to know that I am here for you, that I have your back, that I care about your well-being. And a lot of times it doesn't translate, I guess, so much through Zoom, right? Or Teams, because we're kind of like on a schedule. It almost seems like when you're on the computer, like you got to hurry up and go. Where when you come to the office, you can sit here and chill. I tell students, I have those pillows on the chairs for a reason because I've had students come that they don't have to come talk to me. If you need to just sit here and hold a pillow to squeeze it, punch it, whatever you need to do so that you can collect yourself and go back to class or whatever, that's what I'm here for. So they get that vibe of, I could just come here. With the teams, this is a meeting. We're going to have to talk about these things. All right, glad to see you. Glad you're doing good. Keep it moving because I got the next person. So
understandable.
Yeah.
Now, how difficult or easy has it been for you to implement the COVID-19 related safety measures and protocols in your building before the mask mandate was lifted?
So when COVID hit, I was still in school business, and I was teaching heavy at that time. So the COVID mandates of standing behind the glass as an instructor, wearing a mask and a shield, and trying to teach students in the classroom and virtually, because we had to split them up and make it half, was very difficult because our buildings were not set up technology-wise to incorporate all of that stuff. So we had systems where you can't hear what's happening in a speaker. So the students are struggling to hear what's coming through the mic because they're sitting at home. And then I have a mask and a shield on and I'm standing behind a glass. So they're struggling. So there's a lot of, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't hear you. Class is interrupted. Now the flow is just off. I like to be funny and have fun in my classes. And now y'all not hearing the jokes. And if I have to repeat it, now it's over. Like, it's dead. It didn't work. It didn't land, you know?
Yeah, for me, I actually, for the first semester, I enjoyed being fully online because it was just, I felt like, okay, I was getting a little burnt out anyway.
Yeah.
And even though COVID was horrible, the online classes was kind of a blessing in disguise for me for the first semester. But once it became to the second and third semester online, it kind of was getting a little frustrating because of the fact that I'm like, well, my friends they're going to class once a week. I would at least like one type of in-person class. But my social work department, they cut all that out. They was like, nope, we're not doing that. It's completely online.
Yeah.
But like before with did you feel connected to your students, I felt very disconnected from not only my professors, but my classmates. And it was hard because not only am I one of the only black people in this department. Right. Now, all my other like peers and like my groups, they already know each other because some of them are already roommates and some of them, they hang out on a regular. Right. So I felt like an outsider on top of COVID and being isolated from my family. It was just a lot going on. So I don't even know how you even put up with that whole mass shield thing.
Well,
I was suffocated.
So when you have responsibilities, then you kind of put up with things that you might not have before because okay, it's either you're going to do what they're asking you or you don't have a job, right? Mm-hmm. If I don't have a job, then who's paying my mortgage? Nobody. I'm not about to go on the pole. I mean, I probably could do it, but I'm not about to do all of that. So I'm a do it and I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to make it work. But it was, to me, I felt like you, like that's a struggle for students. I don't want the students to lose out on experience. This is for them, right? Mm-hmm. This is for students to understand this material, to get the benefit out of it. I'm teaching a career course. That course was designed to not just help students get a job, but to help them figure out who am I? What is it that I really want to do? How do I go about fighting for and finding that passion and figuring it out? And then connecting them with actual employers and interviews and all that so that they can get a job and be guaranteed and secure their future. Mm-hmm. Half of that was cut out. So how do we actually really give the students this real experience? So I could see as a student where you're like, I'm just like, it's great to be at home. I don't have to get up and roll out of bed. Like, I loved it too. Let me just tell you, because when I just like log on to this computer real quick, I don't have to get out of the bed. Oh, it was dope. But that disconnect of the in-person, the conversations that happen in the classroom naturally when you bring up a topic, like especially a controversial topic, right? When we're talking about like interview clothing and they're like, oh, but that's sexist and why do women have to wear this or that? And then we have that conversation, that dialogue is what engages you, which makes you feel excited in the classroom. And we're losing out on all of that because you simply can't even hear me, or because you're at home on a computer and typing it into the screen is not the same as bringing it up and sparking that conversation, right? Yeah. I don't know, but personally, I had to stop saying it too. COVID for me was a blessing. And it's crazy that I had to stop saying it because it really was for me, but a lot of people lost their lives. A lot of people were struggling. But for me, it came at a time where I needed a break. I was literally like a week before, like, I need to not have to come to work every day. I need to not have to get up. I need to just breathe. And then COVID hit and I was like, thank you, God.
I definitely felt that. So leading into the next question is just, how do you feel about the mask mandate being lifted?
Ooh, so I am very nervous about the lifting of the mask mandates. I feel like we've watched COVID transition and turn into different variants over and over. And I think the decision might have been a little bit premature. But I think it stemmed from a place of trying to get back to normal. I think that this whole approach towards COVID is like, let's get back to what we know. Mm-hmm. I don't know that we'll ever get back to what actual normal really is. And so to me, the lifting of the mask mandates is kind of putting us all at risk. So what we do know for certain, because there's a lot of uncertainties around COVID and what actually is taking place, right? And how things are going to affect us long term. But what we do know is with people wearing masks and washing their hands finally, because people is nasty, the cases of the flu have been down, right? People are still getting COVID, yes, but not as much. Mm-hmm. People are vaccinated, so the symptoms are not as strong. So there were benefits to wearing masks. And I think that we've just thrown it all away in the efforts of trying to be back to normal.
Yeah,
So,
I definitely feel like they just didn't want to go into another summer
yeah,
with us having to wear masks and
Yeah.
restaurants being put
yeah,
into a capacity limit. And then I
Yeah.
personally feel like it's all about the money with the state, and that's
Yeah.
why everything is always lifted and then put back. And
Yeah.
then, but I feel like ever since Brockport lifted this mandate, I had a runny nose. And I don't like that.
Yeah. Well, the crazy thing is that, too, there are still places who have not lifted the mandates, and they're still doing protocols because they understand there's still a risk. And it's very real. But there's some places like here, I hate to say it, that is kind of like, I walk to work and I'm like, yeah, COVID doesn't exist here. And then I leave work and go somewhere else. I'm like, where's my mask? I forgot all about it because we're just not doing that anymore.
And that's my thing. I feel like the decision being so premature, it kind of is like conditioning us to like think. I don't want to say backwards, because the whole purpose is to get back to the quote unquote norm, what we once knew before. But in terms of actually forgetting what we had, like, took so much time to learn, like, wear your mask, wash your hands.
Yeah.
So then, all right, as someone who doesn't leave Brockport campus often, like, it's often that I'm going to forget to bring my mask whenever I go outside of Brockport.
Yeah.
So even for, like, Rochester, I'm like, hey, my mask.
You know what frustrates me, though, is that even though they lifted up the mandate, it's still certain places that you go on this campus that you have to have a mask.
Oh.
So the other day I went into Hazen,
Me too, yesterday.
and I completely forgot that I needed a mask. But thank God they give them to, if they see you not wearing a mask, they'll give you a mask.
Okay.
But I was like, I seen the sign, I'm like, oh, dang. I don't have a mask on me, because usually I was carrying a mask in a Ziploc bag in my purse.
Right.
But since it's been lifted.
And now things like that is what lead me to feel like this decision was premature, because it's medical places, for the most part, that still have those mandates. Not just have a mask, but they're specifying what type of mask. So I walked in with a cloth mask to the dermatologist, and they're like, oh, here, you need this one, because those ones are not valid. So if it's so real at the doctor's office, why is it that in schools, and mostly schools are the ones that are lifting these mandates, why is it okay to not have one at all?
That's a really good question, and I hope soon we find out the answer.
Yeah, I don't want to know the answer to that.
I'll be out of here, so
get
me out.
Lucky, I'm stuck here for another 2 years. So, compared to the past years, how much harder or easier is it to form relationships with your students right now?
Ooh, I would say it's a lot harder at this point, because so we were already dealing with, from my perspective, a generation of students who grew up on watching YouTube, communicating with people through a screen, and not having a whole lot of face-to-face interaction, right? When I was coming up, we was outside all the time.
FYI, so we're 99 babies right here.
So I'm not going to specify any specific generation. I'm just going to say that the newer generation, and I could talk about my own kids. When I'm telling them to go outside, they're like, but what are we going to do? I'm like, nobody had to ask me what to do. I just wanted to be outside, right?
Double edged to a tree.
Right. So with the generation of kids who don't have those skills of just naturally connecting with people, making friends, or talking to people outside of a screen, it was already a struggle in the classroom and on a campus to kind of connect. So we were already fighting an uphill battle. Then with COVID hitting, we have students who were in high school that had to go virtual for school, right? So they didn't have a senior prom. They didn't have a lot of those social activities that you would do in high school. And then they are shot into college, where they're coming into a virtual situation. They don't know how to interact on a college campus. They don't know what it's about, what it's really like, because they haven't experienced what college is. So when you reach out to talk to them, everybody is so afraid to talk. When you do a class on Teams or Zoom, nobody wants to have their camera on, let alone answer a question or ask a question. There's this fear of, I'm going to be judged, or I don't know, are they going to not like me? And so I have to do a whole lot of, it doesn't matter about people, and this is really for you, and get your money's worth, because you're paying for this experience. And so I'd say now is definitely a lot more difficult. I think I have the benefit in being a senior counselor for EOP that students are kind of forced to meet with me, so they get to know me, and then they're like, oh, nah, she cool. I could vibe with her. I could open up. I could really be real, because I understand she has my back. But outside of that, it's a bit more difficult to connect. It really is.
Yeah. Well, we want to thank you for taking part in our podcast, being our first guest ever.
That part, period.
It's like first lady stuff.
Thanks for being honest and holding it down and not giving us fake answers.
No, yeah, you know I got you. I'm glad that y'all doing this. It makes me feel good to see students taking such initiative and doing something so great. I hope to see this on a bigger scale. And again, like I said, don't forget us little people when y'all make it. So when y'all the next Breakfast Club, I want to be the first guest on that show too.